Hello, everyone. I'm back for the podcast, and today I'm so excited. We got Sid Alexandria here, and actually, we had just these funny conversations like, "What shall I call you? Starseed, Lightworker." So yes, Sid, what you think? What shall I call you?
We both agreed we don't really, labels are fun to use to better understand things, but it's like at the end of the day, what labels don't matter. We're all just what we are. So I mean, sure, you can call me Starseed, Lightworker, Sid. That's what I
Well,
am, I guess.
a beautiful soul, I would say.
Thank
So
you. So are you.
thank you. So, just quickly for the introduction, I came across a podcast, an interview Sid was on, and she caught my interest, and I thought, like, really, wow, I need to dig into her. I need to find out who that lady is because, quite frankly, she's the first one from Gen Z I I found on internet that came out and spoke her truth and you know took being brave and say starseed and being brave saying stuff like we're hybrids, we're mixed with alien races. So yeah, that's why I just reached out and hoped that she would accept my invitation, and here she is, right?
Of
So
course.
Sid, you,
Yeah,
as I
thank you so
said,
much for
you,
having me.
yeah, it's beautiful. So as I said, you're very young, right? And basically, you always felt like there is something else, meaning of life, who we are, where we came from. What we read is actually just bullshit, right? So
Hmm.
history is like, a novel to me based
Yeah.
on, maybe some true, but basically a novel someone had a good time writing down, right? So
Yeah.
growing up, when did you realize, actually, was there an experience you had, or was there just always this inner knowing that there's something off on earth?
Yeah, I would say both. And I mean, I've always felt just, I feel like if you're watching this, I'm sure everyone's felt just kind of different and that there's like some mystery behind this and there's a greater meaning than just wake up and when you're young, you see your parents go to work and do these things and you're like, what is this all about? So, I had those feelings as well. And I remember having, when I was really little, I vaguely remember having this imaginary friend, I thought it was. And this was only for a little bit, but I knew it was like this imaginary friend, but I knew he was a boy that was dead. And it was just totally normal to me. And I remember a family member of his that was also dead, that was a girl, was coming to visit him. And I was like, yeah, she can stay here for a while too. And then as I got even just a few years after that, because after that instance, he eventually went away. I didn't like his female family member. I don't know if it was his cousin or his sister, but after she came and like visited, it was so random to me, but I was like, okay, I don't really want to be close friends anymore. And a few years after that, I was thinking about it, remembering it, and I was like, that's so weird. So I asked my parents about it, and they were like, we have no clue what you're talking about, Sydney. We don't remember that. And I was like, well, it's because I never told you, because he told me not to tell you. And they're like, okay, that's weird. And they just kind of played it off. And there was nothing that weird again until I was in like eighth grade. And then I would get just kind of random crossed over earth spirits, aka like dead people, that would come and show me their death scene. And it was really bothering me. And I knew, because I had heard of like psychics and mediums, I knew that like, oh, this is like some psychic medium thing that's happening to me. And I started to get a better grip on that and set my own boundaries, because I was a person with really no set boundaries when I was younger. And I feel like a lot of people are, they just give, but you need to set your boundaries. So I did that. And now I'll get dead people if it's like an important message for a loved one or something. Uh, and I've always been very spiritual, but up until then, I was like, oh, wow, this is like super real. I've always been open-minded yet skeptical. So I'm a really sciencey person. I'm really nerdy. I was always just naturally really good at school. I wouldn't ever really study, maybe like a couple minutes before the test, but I have a really good memory. So I would just remember things and make educated guesses. And school was really easy for me. So I was into, uh, botany, and we had to take biology, but I took like earth and space science and astronomy and a little bit of forensics and chemistry, even though I didn't have to. And like as many science courses as they offered, I would take as my electives. So I was always open-minded yet skeptical. And after 8th grade, and once I got into high school and started controlling like the dead people coming through, by the time I was in junior year, I had gone through a breakup because I was in a pretty serious relationship in middle school and high school. So I went through a breakup, and that gave me all this time to like do things by myself instead of always doing stuff with my boyfriend. So I started researching because I'm in a generation where we have YouTube and
Right.
we can Google things, and it's so much easier. So I had access to research these things that I was interested in. And I did go to a psychic around that time too, just a couple of times. I've been to a psychic 3 times, and she taught me about tarot cards and palmistry, which that I was really like, there's no way that's kind of real. I remember calling on the phone to schedule an appointment, and the receptionist asked me if I want a palm reading or a tarot reading, and I said, like, neither. Like, is that an option? She's like, no, it's not really an option, but you can talk to her about it when you get here. But I was like, okay, let's just go with palmistry then, because that made more sense to me. And then, once I got there, she taught me like how it works and how it is, scientific, but it's just science that we don't fully understand yet on Earth. It's energetics, it's energy, it's, your own intuition pulling the right cards, and you're on a vibrational match. And I started to understand that and understand palmistry as well. And I was like, okay, this is really cool. So I left that day. I had bought my first tarot deck. I had bought some crystals at the time. I don't buy crystals anymore, which is a side topic, but now I feel like the crystals should stay in the earth, but I love the crystals I have. So secondhand crystals, crystals that are already, you know, in out of the earth, okay, but I don't want to support brands that are mining crystals from the earth. If you want to go crystal hunting and like pick them yourself and intuitively do it in like a morally correct way, I think that's so beautiful. But for me, I just wouldn't buy from people anymore. But anyway, I started having these thoughts after that, and I started getting more into, things that I always kind of had a feeling about. And I started trusting my intuition more and wanting to be more eco-friendly and really questioning the school system
Right.
and, like you said, history especially, and the government and our food. And I just started questioning like everything. In junior year of high school, that's when I, like I said, was researching all this. So then it was adding fuel to the fire. And for a while, I was just kind of mad at the system. And I was like, this is bullshit, like what is this? And I was frustrated that no one else around me really fully recognized this, and that there's some people around me and some friends who sort of understand, but yet they're still doing things. And I was just kind of frustrated. So I wasn't going to school a lot. I physically made my body kind of sick because I feel like it was a mental thing. I was like frustrated, set, so that manifested in like physical pain, and I had no clue what was wrong with me. And then it kind of slowly would go away sometimes if I was in a better mood. And I had a job, so I was working a lot. And in my free time, I was just researching. I would work, hang out with friends, and that would kind of ease the pain. And then I was like, once I got to senior year of high school, I went for the first week, and I was like, okay, I can't do this anymore. I thought I could do one last year, but I can't do it anymore. So I decided to switch to a different school, the alternative high school, which is just like a smaller setting. And I always say that that was like my college, even though I only went there for a few months because I graduated a bit early as well. I was like, that was like my college experience. And that's why I can't do any more school, because, I switched schools and that just felt like a refresher. And I don't think I missed a single day of school. I think I missed one day, and that was to go to my own qhht session that I received. So I was like, this is the exception. This is okay to miss school for. And that's when I got into like extraterrestrials, was that junior senior year. So that was a whole other awakening, because I didn't really believe in like intelligent alien life when I was younger. And I think that's just because of the environment I was in. I was like, sure, there's got to be like bacteria or something on other planets, but I really didn't believe in full on like human looking aliens. I thought that was kind of far fetched for some reason. But once, like I said, I got more down the spiritual path, I was like, there is, because now I know there is. So it
Isn't
was,
it interesting? With the
yeah,
spiritual journey, I was always against everything that is sci-fi,
yeah,
that's bullshit. And but once and UFOs and all that stuff is like, oh, you crazy, right? It's like really tinfoil head and everything. But once I started my spiritual journey, it automatically leads you to alien life. I think it just leads you there because it's basically what it is, right? They created us. We are
yeah.
their project, right? In
Mhm.
their own image, right? So yeah, it's so interesting that you had kind of the same, first the spiritual, part, and then you came into the ET. So when did you kind of got this click, like, yes, that's it?
I mean, I feel like the click was the ETs and the hybrid children, that I feel like there's hybrids between humans and extraterrestrials. I had a major connection with that. And that's kind of what I was like, okay, so if this is true, obviously all of the other alien stuff, aliens exist. I never really fully believe, like if I hear someone say something, I'll take it into like consideration, but I don't ever fully believe something, even in the spiritual community, because there's so much like false light and things like
Yes.
that in the
Mhm.
spiritual community too. And a lot of it is like the government propaganda, I feel like, because they're like, okay, there's this huge community of light workers, and they have these beliefs, and they're feeding off of the light workers who are just starting out and see a video because it's so accessible, and they want to push this narrative that's a false narrative. So you have within the spiritual community people believing multiple different things too. And that's where you have to really differentiate between, do I have my own proof on this, or is this just someone else's, proof that I'm hearing and believing it for myself? So it's a
Yeah.
lot. And like you said, if you go on like your true spiritual path, if you keep diving more into it, it's gonna lead you to extraterrestrials at
Yes,
some point.
right. It's not,
Yeah.
there's no way around, right? It's
Yeah.
yeah.
And there's people who aren't into it yet, and that's totally fine. Or they're into like angels or something, or they're perceiving it a bit differently. And it's like, sure, you can have your own truth, because you shouldn't believe other people
Yeah.
just because they're saying it. But I do think the ultimate truth is like, we all have our own theory of the universe. Maybe
Yeah.
some people don't, but if you're watching this, I'm sure you do.
Yeah.
And it's like, you have to stick with your own theory of the universe. And I think eventually it's going to lead you to that, because I know for me it's like everything in my life leading up to this has led me to the current state of the theory of the universe that I have. And it incorporates aspects from all these different religions, but of course I don't identify with a religion. I'm spiritual, because I feel like all religion is kind of it's all the same thing at its core, but then it gets twisted within the different, side religions of it. But it's all really one spiritual source. So I think that's what I choose to acknowledge, is that one truth, and that everything's connected, and that the universe is so vast. And obviously, it's going to lead you to, there's other planets and stars, and there's life there. And if there's not physical human looking beings, there's still energy there, and that's still life. Like, energy is life. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what science says too, right? Everything is energy, right? And energy, never ends, never dies. It just transforms into something new, right? It's like, I don't know whether it was one of your videos or someone else, but it was a nice analogy. It's like water, right? It's water is an energy. Then you boil it, and then it
Yeah.
becomes steam. It's still the energy of water, but it just took on a different form, right? And 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 that's what for me as well is the whole life, with this reincarnation we have. We're not gonna, the physical part dies, right? But the soul, the energy, the essence of our energy, that's gonna transform into something new. Would you agree?
Exactly.
Agree on
Yeah,
that?
yeah,
It's
yeah. And
just
I
from that
believe in,
just from that point, if when the scientific people say like, oh, after death there's nothing, it's like, well, you contradict yourself. You say as a scientist energy never ends, just transforms, and now here you are and don't believe in reincarnation. I mean, for me that is really controversial.
it definitely is. Like, I believe it's interesting because some people ask you, if you say you're spiritual, and some people will ask you, well, do you believe in like heaven and hell, or do you believe in reincarnation? And I'm like, both in a sense, because when people say heaven and hell, they think of, clouds in the sky and God welcoming you when you die, or hell is like this fiery pit. I don't know where people believe it is physically, but I'm like, I believe in like a heaven and hell realm, but it's not your
Yeah,
good or
yeah.
your bad, because obviously there's things that I feel like myself are morally right and morally maybe I shouldn't do them. I don't like saying I believe in good and bad, but as humans, we can acknowledge that there's good and bad things. So I feel like it's not like a heaven or a hell, it's like this realm, and if you feel the energy you gave off. So in this life, when we die, if we had like energy where we gave off lots of good energy to people, I feel like we're going to feel that. We're going to feel the energy we gave off. So if we were good, we're going to go to heaven in the higher realms, you could say. And then if we did things that were bad to people, we're going to feel that too. So it's going to feel like hell. And if we were kind of okay, we're going to feel that somewhere in the middle. Like, I feel like everything's on a spectrum.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't really understand that fully. Some like people will understand some things on a spectrum, but they don't see everything on a spectrum like how I do, because everything's energy. So an energy's on a spectrum. So therefore everything is on a spectrum.
Exactly, exactly. So how do you
And then
see
I
the
think,
things? Have you visual, visual things that come through when you talk about you see spectrums, or is it from a mental state, you mean?
I mean, both.
Both.
Like, yeah, and whenever I explain it, I kind of see it as like the high vibrational good energy I kind of see as being in this heaven state, and like low, and that's kind of why I do the hand motions. I'm trying to really convey it, but everyone has to make their own mental, image of it. And then I also think that after kind of we've marinated in this realm for a little bit, I think people always talk about like when they have NDEs. Well, it's interesting because I have a couple of friends who had polar opposite experiences and their near-death experiences. I had a past coworker who was pretty religious. His family's religious, and he explained to me how he knew that Jesus was real because he had actually like died for a minute or two, and he said that he went to heaven and he saw this man, and he explained the outfit he was wearing and like the whole way he looked, and then he remembers like this man telling him you got to go back, so he went back. And then I have another friend who died during an overdose for a few minutes and then was brought back, and I was with that person when it happened, and like as soon as they woke back up after they were crazy for a minute, I was like, what did you see, because you died? And they were like, absolutely nothing, because that's what they were expecting. So I feel like when you have especially NDEs, but even when you die, you probably experience what you're expecting, because like you create your reality. So I don't think that ever really stops. So I feel like when you die, if you go into the light, if you don't, that's another story. But if you do, like so many people see in their NDEs, I feel like mentally you see things, but I do feel like there's kind of a physical place where this happens. And I believe currently, it might change, but currently my thought is that you go to what's called a stargate. And you either go to, for us, it would be Arcturus, or Antares, and those are like major energy points in our galaxy.
Yeah.
So I think you go to a Stargate, which I like to explain as kind of like an airport. Um, this is always the analogy I use because I explain it to a lot of people, and I'm like, I live in Michigan, so around me, the major airport is Detroit, and that would be kind of like Arcturus for our Milky Way galaxy. And there's also an airport in Flint, and if I had a connection to Flint, I would go to that airport, even though it's a bit, not the usual one that I would go to. And that would be like Antares. It would be the Flint airport for me. So if you have a connection to there, you might go to that Stargate. Or if you have a connection, if you don't really have a connection, you're probably just going to go to the major one for your galaxy, Arcturus. And
I like
then
that.
I feel like when you're at the Stargate, you have like people talk about your life overview. I feel like you have a being with you, or maybe multiple beings, probably usually just one kind of watching it with you and seeing kind of a recap of everything in your life. And then ultimately, I think you choose your next major life. Because I mean, time, I'm sure we've all heard everything's happening simultaneously. And I definitely agree with that. But on a human level, so we can understand it, it's like we feel like yesterday was yesterday. We feel like tomorrow's in the future. So you got to kind of differentiate, because when you feel these other experiences or snippets from lives, you usually know kind of when it was from your reality's perspective. And sure, there's other realities happening now, but the timeline you're on, you've got to focus on that one so you can understand and don't go totally bonkers.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I feel like you kind of pick your next life and they help you to make that decision. And some people are going to be like, oh, I just want a relaxing life and serious next life. And if that's in the cards for you and that makes sense for you as a soul, they might just be like, okay, that's fine. But if you have a lot of karma to work out, they're probably going to be like, okay, you should go to this place and work on things with this person, or work on this passion that you haven't, experienced yet. So I think they do a lot of guiding and pushing you in the right direction so that ultimately you can make your own decision. So it's like heaven and hell, reincarnation, and astrology, because then I think you're born on a day that suits you too.
Yeah, so it's funny that the life review, right? So
Mhm.
I always say in the Bible it's called the Judgment Day, right? It's
Yeah.
and the way like to explain it to people is that hell, that part where religion call hell, where bad people go, is actually part of the life review, because during the life review you feel everything that you have done to other people. If you hurt a lot of people, then you feel all that pain at once. And obviously, negative, dark people obviously feel it as hell, because they feel a lot of pain because they caused a lot of pain. But if you've been, a good person and made sure that you could love a lot of people, then you probably don't feel as much of that hellfire, because the pain you've caused other people is very small compared to the people you loved and supported. And once you've done that review, then you have actually the purification of fire, which for me represents when the eagle and the serpent fight each other, but then merge and then rise as the phoenix.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, I totally agree with what you said. The end there was interesting because I haven't really heard much about that before, but yeah, I totally agree with that.
So yeah, and then as you said, we have our spirit group, right? It's like I don't even think they are, they're I don't think we are above each other, right? We all just bring something else to the table. But the spirit group, or your spirit guides, a lot of people call them, right? We are a team, and then we, as you say, we sit together and say, okay, what have you achieved from what you planned in this lifetime, right? And if there's something not complete, right, then you would have to repeat it, complete the cycle, the karmic cycle, in that sense. And then you probably would then decide, okay, where is the best place I can complete these cycles, in order then as well for the soul to rise, I think we have an ascension as a physical being, but also our soul is going through an ascension of densities, right? So
Yeah,
that needs to be considered all the time too, right?
definitely.
So you
Yeah.
have a fantastic, really fascinating video out about the connection between um, ET races and how they incarnate in human races. You know, the connection, because it was really funny. I had this encounter with the Arcturian Council. I never felt connected with that so much. You know, the GFL and all that stuff I heard, and everyone was talking about the Arcturian Council. I was never. So one night, I had they came to me, you know, as a hologram. You know, it's a hologram, right? And they have a very advanced holographic system. They came into my bedroom announcing we are the Arcturian Council. I said, what the fuck? And then it was interesting. It's a whole another story. But just to come to your video, it's like, and you said like Arcturians like to incarnate into Asian, you know, physical bodies. So where
Yeah.
did you get these connections from? Was that a download, or you just dug down into a
This
rabbit hole, or what was that?
So it's interesting because when I got into extraterrestrials and Arcturians was one that I actually didn't really hear about. I heard about like Syrians and Pleiadians and I mean reptilians because those are like the main ones. And it's for a reason that I think people hear about them the most. And I feel like it's because like currently those races are really active and like a lot of people are incarnating as those races right now. So it makes sense that now that's kind of what we hear about a lot, but there's all these other ones, and there's the ones that the mainstream doesn't have names for either. So there's a ton. But when I heard about, I don't think I heard about Arcturians at all, but I was doing my own personal work, looking up at the sky and seeing what stars I felt called to and like connected to. And there was this one, I was like, yeah, that star, that star. And every night it was kind of like the same spot in the sky. There's a couple, there was a few, but this one I had a major connection to. So then I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get the app on my phone now, and now I'll see what it is after not knowing. And the main one was Arcturus. And so I have a connection to Arcturus too, even though I'm not Asian. So it's like you don't have to be these certain races to have these connections, but it's like there's definitely correlation. So once I felt connected to Arcturus, I researched more about it and I'm like, oh, this is like a common ET race for people to know about. And I got into the other ones as well. And it just kind of came naturally to me to look at people and be like, oh, they have a huge connection to Arcturus or Sirius or whatever. And I was like, a lot of Asian people are Arcturians, a lot of Syrians are Black people, like a lot of Native Americans are Pleiadian. I'm like, there's a correlation. And then I read the Prism of Lyra book, and I was like, oh, and this book actually acknowledges it. Because I didn't want to say that because I'm like, is that okay to say? Is that politically correct to say
Okay.
to someone like? Can I say, oh, you're Asian, so you know they have a strong connection to Arcturians? Can I say, oh, you're Indian and you have a strong connection to Vega? But I've never had an issue. No one's ever been like, that's not okay for you to say. But, and I think it's because I'm talking about it in the spiritual community and we're already open-minded and okay with that. And we've already ditched, the labels. We're
Yeah.
already like, whatever, say whatever, no filter is fine. So I think that has something to do with it. But I was like, this lady published this in a book, and that's what I've always been feeling. And then I found a few other people who do similar things, like Akashic Records readings, like I do, which I'm like, that blows my mind because I was like, I'm so glad I'm not the only one. Because takes me a while to find these people because you can find videos on the ET races and whatnot, but it's hard to find videos about connecting, to past lives of those races and correlations within certain groups of people on Earth and birthdays and human genetics and soul genetics, like I like to call it. So it's like I'm glad I'm not the only one, and it makes sense that it's, I already had my own proof, so that's why I believe that too. That's what everyone has to do.
No, that's really interesting. So that sounds very much how I do my research. So I will get all of a sudden a concept. They give my higher self, whoever, give me a concept. It just pops up. It's something that I've never thought about, and then I just hear go research, and then there's this divine algorithm, I call it, on internet, right? So whether it's AI, steered, or whether it's everything's energy anyway, right? So
Yeah.
I just trust what's coming in then, right? And I would just click without thinking on videos, and I will get exactly that confirmation. Like you, it's like I had ideas, and some people will go like, "Are you sure?" It's like, "Whoa, that was my higher self given to me."
Mhm.
And then I go on YouTube or internet, Google, and there it is. Someone else, was given the same thing. Like for
Yeah.
instance, because you're Alexandria, I love that, Alexandrian library, right? Um,
Mhm.
so you have a connection to ancient Egypt too, right? I thought
Yeah.
you
And
said. So I wanted to know about this library they talk underneath the Sphinx, right? So when I started to astral travel, I was like, okay, I want to travel underneath the Sphinx and want to see what's under there. And I ended up in water. I was diving in water, and I was like, "Huh? What's this? Am I, maybe I got lost, or maybe today is not the day, right? Someone's fooling around with me." So I stopped. But then the next thing I do, I watch a video where they tell about they testing how much data actually they can store in a water drop, because they store it in the water, and it can
yeah,
capture a lot more data than any chip we have at this point. And I thought, like, okay, could it be that these beings have stored the knowledge in the water underneath all the channels going around, the tunnels underneath the pyramids, and it's all connected, right? And it's a lot of water running, and they don't know where it comes from. They suck it, pump it out, and it comes back, right? And it's like, maybe, right? So, and then the next thing I watch is, have you seen Matthias de Stefano, who remembers Atlantis?
no,
You have to look him up. And
you.
so, and then get this video where he says basically the knowledge is not in a library as we think. It's stored in water from the Atlantean.
That makes so much sense. This is a huge breakthrough happening
Right?
right now.
I get
Yes.
chills. I get chills.
Oh my gosh. That is awesome.
But
Like,
because our mind sometimes believes that a library is knowledge, and it needs to be in books, you know that's the 3D idea of how we keep knowledge, right? So everyone would expect a library,
yeah,
right? But it was kind of like, also I think why they did it is because we need to be ready for that knowledge, and we can only be ready for that knowledge if we know how they stored it,
yeah.
right?
Once we understand how that's possible, then we'll be ready. That, yeah,
Exactly, right.
I totally agree. That's awesome. I didn't think of that. I've always, and I haven't astral traveled as much as it sounds like you have, because I've always wondered and been curious with the Sphinx. I think it was definitely a lion
Yeah.
originally before, and like I've had those little downloads, and I've felt like there was something under the Sphinx that's super powerful, but I just kind of I didn't see it super clear, but it felt like a lot of this substance. And now that you say like water and it's in water, I'm like, that definitely
Oh, you
adds
saw
up.
you saw substance, really?
Yeah. Yeah. And water's so powerful. I mean, we could, that's a whole
Yeah.
Masaru Emoto. Like, I'm sure
Eh,
you've heard about that. That's water is so powerful. That's awesome.
So how growing up with your parents, did they kind of support you on that path, over there more like, oh, she's going crazy, we need to look out, we need to we might have to talk to a psychiatrist, or send her to counseling, or were they very open?
Um, Probably, I want to say more so on the open side because they were never like worried. And I grew up around my dad a lot. I didn't talk about it to my mom so much. She knew that there was some weird stuff going on with me, but my dad was the one that was like, "Yeah, you're crazy." He would just kind of joke about it a lot, and it would like hurt my feelings a little bit. He's totally cool with it. I think he would rather me like marry some rich guy and like be a trophy wife or something. But I'm like, but he also acknowledges that like he thinks that I like predicted COVID. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't even remember this. And he's like, you told me there's going to be this huge disease, like maybe not in my generation, but in yours. And I'm thinking, like, Dad, I don't think this is the big thing I was talking about. Cause, like, yeah, this was like wide scale, but like, I think it's something else in the future still, Dad. But he's like, what? Like, there's going to be more? And I'm like, I think so. Maybe. We don't know. But I don't know. He acknowledges that, like, in his life, I've predicted things for him, sort of. And I'm not a big predictor because the future always changes.
Yeah.
But my dad has like such strong intuition too. So does my mom. So does everybody. But I think my parents both find it interesting, but I'm way too far down the rabbit hole for them to like digest it, which has been an issue with me. Like in my personal life, I feel like it's not a huge issue, but I mean, it's just a thing that happens. Is once you get into stuff, it's hard for you to talk about the weather in
Yeah.
small talk, and it's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
why are we talking about this when there's so much more going on? So I think they're just kind of like, they're more so they want to talk about more of the small talk or like moderate into it. And I just want to go full blown because I'm close with them. So you want to talk about those things with people you're close with, which I bet a lot of people can relate to, is like you want to tell your family and your close friends, and they're just not really ready for it, which
No.
is okay.
Yeah.
But, I'll have my days where I'll go on a rant to them and they're like, okay. And I'm like, it's whatever. I planted the seed, and if you want to water it, then it'll grow. But if
Yeah.
you don't, it's fine. It'll still be planted there. So they're happy with it. They're happy I'm happy.
Oh,
They were
that's
concerned
good.
at first, but now that they see that I'm kind of, that there's people on my wait list now, that kind of helps because they're like, okay,
Yeah.
maybe she can actually do something with this.
Yeah, I think it is still this 3D validation, right? They,
Hmm.
usually people still need, right? and
Yeah.
and 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 obviously, as a parent, as you as well now, you want it just the best for your child, and you just
Yeah.
don't want your child to get lost somewhere, right? And also, I mean, with the whole spiritual um field, there's a lot of corruption as well, right? I
Yeah.
mean, all these cults and
Mhm.
and these groups, they are so coward and make sure that you actually lose the connection to the outside
Yeah.
world, right? I mean, being worried is a valued thing, right? So
Yeah.
and like same age people, I mean, all I was thinking, like, you are at the age where everyone's on Instagram, having those filters, fake lips, fake nails, you know
Mhm.
and just don't know what they do with themselves, basically, right? It's like, okay, I don't get the attention at home, let's put myself out there, make my look myself like something I'm never gonna look like. And then there's you having a totally different approach and angle to life. Was that very hard for you to deal with same age people?
Yeah, because I don't have many friends. I have some awesome friends. I just don't have friends that I'm super close with, and most of my friends consist of like my ex-boyfriends and like close friends that I grew up with that are more like family. And we don't talk very often, but like when I need to talk to someone or when they need to talk to someone, we're there for each other. And it's like I'm at a point where it's like that's nice because I don't like kind of I've always been someone who's like planning out my future. And I feel like in the future, I'm definitely going to want more of a community because like I love, and it's mainly, people your age, people who are like my parents' age, if not even older, that contact me usually. And I just want a community of people like that physically, not just online. But eventually, once I'm more financially stable, I know that I really want to build communities where we can all just be together and be ourselves together. Um, Cause yeah, I think I thought I was totally fine with being in my regular big high school. Back when I was in high school and having health issues, I never thought it was because of stress or anxiety from being around people my age who just weren't as open-minded as me. But I'm like, maybe that was a part of it because once I switched to this more open-minded school where it was all of the outcasts kind of, it was I wanted to be at school because they were like, oh yeah, Sid's so cool. She knows astrology and she's into aliens and stuff. It's totally cool. But I mean, they weren't into it like I was, but they were accepting of it. And it's not like the people at the big high school weren't, but I feel like I could maybe sense the energy and I just didn't even realize it. So I guess that's been my experience. And of course, now there's people that I was in high school with that are asking me for readings. And I'm
Oh,
like,
really? That's
yeah.
cool.
And because usually every year I'll post on my own Snapchat, which is just my friends from high school still. Usually on August 8th, the past few years I've been saying on my Snapchat, old friends from high school, if you want a quick little past life reading, let me know. And so I've gotten a few people the past few years. I haven't talked to them. We don't speak, but we have each other on this little social media and they swipe up and they're like, I mean, that would be cool. So I tell them and then we don't talk after that. And that's okay, but it's just I don't purposely distance myself from people, but it's there's just kind of a natural distance which we've all experienced, I feel like. Everyone, no matter which generation you're a part of, there's people in high school who you know of and you've talked to a few times, but you're not best friends and you don't talk every day. So I feel like that's how I am with most people. And I've never really experienced any bullying or anything towards me on a major level, a few times, but not really because of my spiritual stuff. Usually people will say things. People used to call me Sydney Rocks in high school
Oh,
because they thought I liked crystals. And I mean, I do like crystals, but that's not my big thing. But they would call me Sydney Rocks because there was another Sydney. She's actually more into rocks than I am. But I was Sydney Rocks and I had no clue about this until my friends told me and I was like, "What? People have been calling me Sydney Rocks?" And at first I was kind of like, "Really? Why can't you just call me by my name?" But you can't hold any grudges. It's funny now. So,
yeah, right. It just becomes a running joke, right? At some point.
yeah. I can't be mad anymore. Maybe for a second I can be frustrated for a second and then I kind of check myself, but I can't really get super mad anymore. I'll get
Right?
frustrated, but it's hard for me. And I don't like saying that because if anyone else gets mad, that's totally okay, but I feel like eventually you're going to get to a point where it's you don't understand anger as much. You can understand because you remember what it's like to be angry, but it's you get to this point where it's there's not a reason to be angry. You just have to deal with it. If there's an issue, handle it and move on. If someone else is making you feel some type of way, it's they're just projecting it onto you, so you can't
Exactly.
get mad about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
They're holding
understand
the
where
mirror.
everyone's coming from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're holding their own mirror towards you, right? Instead of
Yeah.
looking into the mirror to turn it around, right? Yeah, that's as well very fascinating. So I used to be a very, very angry person. I mean,
Me
through
too.
through my experience, I'm an adoptee. So I was born in
Mhm.
South Korea and I grew up in Switzerland. So there was a lot of anger inside me for a long time. But once I started healing and understanding why I've made this experience, that was my choice before I came. I just forgot, right? It's like this amnesia we get, before we incarnate in this physical body. But once I took this step back and look at it at the whole picture, the whole picture, I can't get angry anymore. It's like Anger that is always towards yourself, right? Anger
Mhm.
never happens, projecting on someone else. So yeah, it's fascinating that when you heal, these negative feelings become less and less
Yeah.
um ex- you know part of your experience.
That's so beautiful that like even you who's been through so much can take a step back and like really just say that like I agree to that. That's like mind blowing because so many people who are in tough situations are like, no, like everything does not happen for a reason because why did this happen to me? And it's like, it's so hard for spiritual people to say, well, you don't want to say, well, it's because you agreed to it. Like, how much of an asshole does that sound like? Like, if someone's going through something, you can't just tell them that. Like, that's so rude and hurtful, and they're going to take it in a terrible way.
Yeah.
And when I was younger, I didn't really believe that everything happens for a reason because my dad has chronic pain and nerve damage and back issues. And it would be so hurtful for me to say, well, and I have kind of thrown this out there now because he's my dad and we're close and I can, but I can't walk up to someone and I could, but I probably wouldn't say, well, you agreed to it. It's because of this reason that you have to deal with. And you chose it before you incarnated here. Like, it's so hard to say that to people and we don't want to. And I feel like a lot of people are good at just keeping their spiritual beliefs to themselves. And I don't even know if I have an opinion on like what we should do about it, but slowly ease into the topic, I think is the answer. Like
Yeah,
what we're doing, we're planting seeds right now. Just think
absolutely.
about it. Maybe
Absolutely.
everything does happen for a reason, and maybe it's all on a higher level because everyone's like, well, there's terrible things that happen in the world. Babies die, and people get diseases. And it's like, yes, like that's terrible. But it's like, there might be like a even higher reason for it. And it's so like, it's sad to people to think about that. They feel like it's like cruel to think that that would happen for a reason. But it's like, you got to ease your way into understanding that maybe it does, and maybe it's for an even higher purpose than we can imagine. And I do think there's things that happen that are against free will, but I think it's very like limited. It's rare because I feel like even the negative beings who are like controlling the world right now, even they know that overriding free will is like they're going to have to face the consequences. And that's why I think there's so many like movies and TV shows and little snippets of the truth because I feel like if they make it seem like in their twisted way that they're telling us the truth because there's this movie about it, like it lessens their karma in a way. And I feel like they know that. And that's why there is truth out there and there's snippets of truth, even in big media, but it's portrayed to be like sci fi, fantasy, alternate reality things that aren't real. But a lot of it is centered around truth and it's just twisted to make a movie about it. And it's
Yeah.
like people who are writing the scripts, they know.
Yeah, so I heard about this concept and that really resonated with me is was that with the disclosure, right? So the thing is, so both, let's call it white hats and black hats, right? Both have to disclose what they're due. That is rule in the universe. You can't, if you have the ability to actually manipulate the future because you can see into future, the different possibilities the future, offers you based on the energy we are at right now, right? But they have to disclose their steps. And the way it's done in a manipulative way so people do not see it as the truth, what is the best way to do? Through movies, right? This saying like, oh, this only happens in a movie. This is exactly what happens in life, right? But they could
Right.
hide this behind the movies, behind Hollywood, behind all these different industries, right, playing with our mind. But after all, they can say, we disclosed it. People were too stupid to believe it, right? So,
Yeah.
and the other interesting thing is as well, when you said, like, before, um, you knew that you'll be, big and known in some ways, but thought like you're going to be actor or, singer or whatever. That came to mind is like star. right? They created that idea of star.
Yeah.
We come as star seeds, and we actually want to go back to what we were, right? So
Yeah.
achieve a status of the star being again. And
Yeah.
therefore the industry, the film industry created, or the entertainment industry created the star concept, because like this they can fulfill their obligation towards creating new stars, but in a fake
Mhm.
sense, unfortunately.
Yeah. And that goes into how language is so interesting, and language is like a spell, and spelling is spells.
Yes, yes,
So
it's
you got to
crazy.
be so careful what you say. I dislike speaking English. Like, I'm like, I don't even know what I'm saying. I know the words I'm saying, I understand what I'm saying, but it's like, what's the meaning behind each word that I'm speaking out of my body right now? Like, I feel like I'm in a trap. Like,
Totally.
oh,
It's so funny you say that, because I started to take those common words and
mm,
started researching their origin. And
yeah,
I would say 90% of the meaning of the, original meaning of the words has been again corrupted. You know,
mhm,
it's like I say the universe, whatever the universe creates or God creates, is actually neutral, and it's about the intention behind it, which makes it bad or good, which makes it dark or light.
yeah,
But everything there is actually in a neutral space.
mhm,
And that's when we start speaking words, right? What is the intention behind it, right? You
yeah,
can say I love you to someone and then beat them up, right? So for
yeah,
that person it's going to be love, and love is bad to them, right? So it's
mhm,
always connected with the intention and the actions around something we speak, right?
yeah. Yeah, and like I did the water and rice experiment, and I tried like this was after like another major awakening, because the spiritual journey, it's like I thought my major awakening was like junior year of high school, and I mean it was, but then I've had these other awakenings after that, and I'm like, okay, this never ends. But I was like, this was after I like really stopped being mad and stuff. So I was like, there's the neutral jar, and then the jar that you say you infuse with love, and then you have the jar that you like tried to infuse with hate. So the one, I didn't do anything to, and the one I'm like, I love you every single day, I would tell it. And then this one, I was like, I hate you. But instead I was like, the intention behind it was more so my energy instead of the words. I was like, the intention was, I can't hate you. I know I
Yeah.
can't hate you. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna say turn green to this one. So it did, and it's like the love and the like, I can't hate you. It looked like the I can't hate you was better than the neutral. Like the neutral was the worst. Like my experiment wasn't the regular experiment. It wasn't neutral and love and hate. It was like neutral and I'm really trying to hate you, but I know I can't, and I love you. So it was interesting to see that. But that goes into like the same thing as, if you say that to someone, like words have so much meaning, but it's the intention behind the word that has like way more meaning and totally overrides it.
Absolutely. So at this point, where do you think your journey is going to take you next? I mean, you're among no the other no that this one first. You're a very young mother, and I adore that, because this not enough, you know, girls your age, thinking about children, and thinking about bringing a life on this earth, because it's very important we keep going with that, right? So, did you face a lot of judgment?
Not really, because I mean, I had already, like, I got pregnant with my son when I was 18, and I had already started my YouTube channel at 17. I had already been kind of openly known as the weird girl since like 16. And I was already out of high school when I got pregnant. I had been out of high school for like over a year because I graduated a bit early and my birthday falls in November. So where I live, it's like I was meant to graduate at 17 anyway. then since I graduated early, it was like kind of right after I turned 17 that I graduated. So I had this year. My goal was always to move out at 18, because I just wanted my freedom, and classic teenager, I felt like I wasn't free. So I was like, I just want to move out. I got to do this for myself. And it turned into a really bad situation because of where I moved into. Um, but that also brought me my son. So I'm obviously grateful for that. And it was a difficult situation that I don't like speaking about much, but that taught me a lot. And you can tell in my past YouTube videos from that time period when I was 18, I feel like when I watch them back, I'm like, I don't even like watching this because the information is like so great and so powerful still because I still was doing a video every week. But I'm like, you can see in my eyes, I'm just like not having a good time. But I moved back in with my mom a week before my son was born, and I didn't tell anyone I didn't tell any of my family about my pregnancy until I was ready to do the gender reveal. I told a couple of my friends before I told my family and before I did the gender reveal. And that was like kind of the announcement, like on Instagram. So old friends from high school saw it. And some of them said like congratulations, but there was only, I believe, two friends from high school that I wasn't super close with in high school, but it was that small alternative high school where everyone was really close. They're the only people that said anything to me, and it was just because of my age. But that was the only thing anyone ever said to me. I think everyone thought that I was going to be a young mom and a teen mom, because when I was younger, that's when I was in a serious relationship in middle school and high school. My boyfriend and I at the time kind of wanted to get pregnant at like 18. We didn't want it back when we were 14, but we knew once we got older and if we were financially stable enough, we knew that we wanted to have kids young. But then after we broke up, I was like, I don't want kids until after I travel the world at least one time around. But then it happened and it manifested because I was comfortable without it. And then the
Yeah.
universe was like, here you go. Now you're comfortable without it. Now you get it. Because of course that's how it works. So I was like, oh, okay, this is happening. I used to want this. So we can adjust to this. I know I have other options, but this is what I want now. And yeah, no one ever really said anything super negative to me. And my family didn't even really either. They were just more so concerned about the situation I was in and wanted to make sure that, like, I was okay. They were just concerned with that, really. They never really said anything about my age. They were just kind of like, and I'm sure they were thinking it, but I'm really lucky because I tested my boundaries so much as a teenager. My family knows what they can and can't say to me because they know I'm gonna do whatever I want
Yeah.
anyways. So they were they were accepting and loving, and now here I am living at my mom's house where I never thought I would be after turning 18. But I love it. And we have such a good relationship now. So having a son and just having children in general, it makes you realize that like you have so much more love for your parents. Even if you didn't get along when you were younger, you're like, oh wow, like whatever it is, now I have so much more appreciation for you and just for like everybody. And you can understand things that you didn't understand before with like parents and how they treat their children certain ways. And I still can't wrap my head around parents who do bad things to their kids, but it's like you can still have compassion for that and understanding because you're in that parent situation now. And it's like you still don't understand the bad things, but it's like you can have compassion towards it more now because once you are someone, once you get your first job, you can understand things employees do. It's kind of like the same thing.
Yeah. 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 So that's beautiful. So you really, I suppose your mom's helping you out, right? With the little one.
Yeah, like now that I have a wait list, she'll watch him sometimes. My mom goes out of town a lot for work, so usually it's just my son and I here, which is kind of interesting. It's an interesting dynamic because usually it's just us, and then she'll come sometimes, and it's nice. It's kind of the perfect situation right now because I have just the amount of like other adult human interaction that I need. Because if it was all the time, then it might be too much, but it's like just the perfect amount of interaction with my mom, so it's awesome.
And you work as a preschool teacher, right?
Yeah, it's like a daycare, preschool, before after school program. I like it. I don't want to do it forever. Like, part of me would not mind doing that like the rest of my life, but so many things. I could study astrology the rest of my life, like all these different things. So I definitely want to move more towards my son going more and me less so that I have more time for this. Which has just been hard because as a mom, I mean, some moms probably just want their kids to get out of the house and go to school. I'm the mom that's like, I want to homeschool you and all this stuff. And it's like, am I going to be able to do that? Probably not now, but maybe in the future. So it's a transition.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're working on a center, right? You can bring them
Mhm.
over.
Yeah. Yeah, I would love that.
Yeah, so this is I just believe it's so many people want to leave a legacy, and then focus on a career, on a business, making all this money. But I think the biggest and most beautiful legacy we can leave behind are our children, because they live our legacy after all, right? So
Yeah.
I really would love that you are an inspiration to all the young women out there to have children.
Yeah, and I don't even want to send that message to like have children, but if you feel called to have children at any age, have children because it can be beautiful. Because it's so often the people, because I'm into like survival skills and then also like eco-friendliness. So just the whole self-sufficiency, sustainability, doing things that can prolong the earth and just like knowing useful skills that like we aren't taught in school, like how to build a fire, how to build a shelter,
Yes.
how to live in the wilderness if your heater or your AC breaks, like because we're relying on all these things. So I'm very into that and spirituality. And I find so often that it's like it's the people who are super into this hippie, spiritual, self-sufficiency path that are like, well, I'm going to do my part and not have kids. And it's like, it would be very useful to reverse this.
Yeah.
And the people who are spiritual and are into self sufficiency and are super intelligent, for them to have kids and pass it down rather than people. I mean, sure, whoever wants to have kids, but I mean, it would benefit the earth and our souls and just the universe. It would benefit if it were more so the people who could teach their kids good things to have kids. Because people who are into like low waste, limiting their garbage a lot. They don't want to have kids because they think kids produce a lot of garbage, which really is not true because I'm into that. I use cloth diapers. I get my son's toys and clothes secondhand. I can think of a handful of things that he's producing waste from, and it's just packaging from food that I'm eating too. And packaging, if I order secondhand things online that has to get shipped to the house, that usually are boxes that you can repurpose. So I'm like, kids don't produce a lot of waste if you do it the correct way. It's just the people having kids who it's not their fault that they're not, awakening and thinking about these things because they've been brainwashed. So no one should feel bad about that. But if you hear stuff like this, once you start to comprehend it, it shouldn't have to be your responsibility, but it is to, look more into that and do things that are more sustainable so that we can sustain this earth and ourselves. So it's not like, every young person should go have kids if they're spiritual, because you got to be, in a good situation. You got to be financially stable. You got to think about it. If you don't want to have kids, don't have kids, but it's beautiful when you do. And I feel like a lot of people can appreciate that when it happens.
Oh, that's so true. But as you said, the system just feeds us with narratives, right? And wants to make sure that they can make, for me, it's all about the money, right? I mean, follow the money, right? So whenever you hear a narrative which, comes across a bit off, follow the money. And then you can see exactly where the truth, it's not the truth what they're telling you. It's about how much money they can make with the
Mhm.
narrative they're selling to you, right?
Right, the health industry, all that.
Oh, Oh yeah.
It's so
How do
sad.
you how you what do you think about the self healing? We can heal ourselves. We actually do not need any medication or all these chemical stuff they make us take or keep us sick actually. So
Yeah. I mean, so it's complicated because there's so many variables, right? Because we have, we can just call it poison in our food, in our water, in our air, in our technology, and all these things that we consume in whatever way, like consuming food, consuming even just like energy, which that affects us physically too. So all of these things we're consuming, so much of it is controlled by whoever's in charge. And of course, like especially in America, in the US where I am, but everywhere in the world at this point is controlled. I'm sure there's some islands somewhere where it's very natural, but they have to be feeling some of the effects of just the energy of the rest of the world too, even. So everyone on Earth is experiencing this. And like I said, there's lots of variables. So if this leads to health conditions, they're gonna try to sell you something that will fix it, some Western medication. And it's gonna work a little bit for some people simply because of like the variables that are happening. But it is designed to make you more sick. So you go back for more because you're like, oh, this helps a little bit. I need more of it because it'll help me more. But it's like, no, we're in an abundant universe where if we believe that we have the cure to everything, we have the cure to everything. It's somewhere in the universe. Everything we think manifests. Like we create our reality. We have the cure to everything. And they're twisting it to make money instead of caring for people. We're living in this world that's trying to be controlled by this negative group of beings. And we just have to wake up to that, realize that. I hate saying these kind of cheesy, cliche things that you hear all the time, but like it's so true. So try to think about it in a different way to fully grasp it. Like we're born onto this planet, yet we're told that we have a name that we're given in a social security number and that we were born within these lines. So we were born in this country or this state. And it's like, what are you talking about, man? I'm just a soul that, chose to come into this body on this planet Earth. And now you're telling me I'm a US citizen or I'm a this citizen or that citizen. And it's like we literally, there was a bunch of old guys who drew lines. Like, do we realize this? You know? So once you grasp that, I think you can grasp, oh, like there's this fruit that naturally grows here, these vegetables that naturally grow here, all these beautiful plants. And there's people who live on islands, especially, who will study different plants and they fast and they don't eat anything. Some don't even drink anything for a certain amount of time. And all they consume is this plant and they get to connect with the spirit of that plant. And they know everything there is to know about that plant because they're connecting to the energy of it, the collective consciousness of it, and they find what diseases it heals. We have the cure to everything. There's so many plants. I think it's interesting. I'm sure people have seen like the little picture online that's like, do you know what these are? And it's a bunch of different logos for brands. And then do you know what these are? They're different types of leaves and plants. And it's like, all the logos, but like maybe one of the plants. It's like we need to really shift our focus and our priorities. And it's so hard because it's like we're born into this. But if you think back few hundred years ago, yes, there was still kind of this group, but it was nowhere as powerful as it is today. And it's like, it's not that we have to go back to the past because we should be working towards our future, but there was a lot of good things back in the day. We can incorporate that, but in a new way to make it even more powerful. Like people say we're kind of repeating Atlantis, repeating Lemuria, repeating Egypt. And it's like we are, but it's like now it's the time has come around again astrologically, where we're in this like super powerful packed of space, like physically.
Yeah.
And also that's going to manifest emotionally. So that's why everyone is saying that we're going through this awakening. It's because physically we're going through this area. Mentally we're going through this area. Like spiritually we're awakening. And it's come around again where we can ascend. So that's what we're doing. And at this point, I think it's inevitable. But just like kind of how we get fully to that point is kind of up in the air still. It's like, do we want this to be smooth or is it going to be kind of rocky? That's up to us. Like, there's all these movies of these apocalyptic situations, and it's like, is that going to manifest because everyone's thinking about it? It's in the back of our mind. I had this conversation with my brother like a year ago when I was having these like dreams, these warning dreams, where I would say in the dream, I was having a dream within a dream. And while I was still asleep, I would wake up and I would tell my family, hey, I just had this warning dream. And then I would really wake up in real life and be like, I had this dream and I was dreaming in the dream and it was this warning dream. And it's like, I've had kind of repeated dreams of the lights not turning on. And I'm like, well, what's the meaning behind that? Like lights, it's like this thing that I kind of don't think about. It's controlled by a big corporation. I don't really think about when I turn the lights on. Like I just kind of expect them to turn on and I'm not thinking about the greater, process behind that. But it's this major corporation that I'm using every day. And I'm like, system collapse? Like, is that what this means? Because that's like the one repeating dream I've had my whole life. And it's like, I'm not really scared of the dark. I don't think I am. Like, it's not that. It's a bigger, like, what does that symbolize? Um, so I don't know. Like, who knows what's going to happen? And I always thought the whole zombie apocalypse, that made no sense to me. Like, why would zombies be a concept? But I'm like, at this point, it doesn't seem that far-fetched, to be honest. Like,
Exactly,
who
right?
knows? Who knows? Like, everyone's like, what are these preppers prepping for? And it's like most preppers are like firefighters or people who know like what situations do happen in the world or have been through like tsunamis or things like that. So it's like you're prepping for everything if you're a prepper. You're thinking of usually everything.
Yes.
And that's what I've got into a lot more lately because I'm like, I don't want to feed into this narrative of there has to be some apocalyptic situation, but I'm like, if I can go into this excited, because there's no fear with me around this. It's like it's exciting to think about. But I'm focusing more on the smooth route where we all live in tree houses and have our organic farms like beneath us and live in harmony with animals. That's what I'm focusing on. But it's like I don't know, maybe it's bad that I do this, but I think about the other possibility too, because I know it's a real possibility, and being a mom makes me want to prepare for that as well.
Well, but you said, and I think that's exactly what we should do. We manifest with what we focus on, right? So I think what they try to do with all these negative outcomes is making sure that we lose the focus on the positive outcome, right? And then if too
Yeah.
many people focus on the negative outcome, then it'll happen, right? Then it'll manifest. So I'm like I'm focusing on really us being back to nature, us being, self-sufficient, us, teaching children, how to grow vegetables, how to grow foods, how to make a fire, as you said, go around, pick your right crystal, that resonates with your energy or resonates with what you have to, your energy to be risen to, right? So
Yeah.
I'm completely focused on on that outcome. But it's funny, it's actually really, as it says in the Bible, and I always say, yes, Bible is not just good, but it's neither just bad. I think we need to just learn how to read the Bible. So in the
Yeah.
Bible, it says like the harvest's coming, right? It'll be the harvest. And a lot of people go like, oh, so many people gonna die and blah blah blah. It's like, no, it's about, is your soul ready? Has your soul done the work it was supposed to do to in order to ascend to the next density? If your soul hasn't done that here in this reincarnation, that it just means you'll be harvest taking away but again, that was your soul agreement to it, right? Free will, and taking away to another 3D system, planet, whatever you want to call it, and repeat that cycle there, right? But it doesn't have to be bad, right? Just because
Exactly.
you disappear from this, realm, doesn't mean it has to be a bad, transformation.
Yeah, you're just going somewhere that suits you better. That's not a bad thing. It's just a thing that has to happen at this point because it's like Earth, Terra, Mother Gaia, whatever you want to call her, she's raising her frequency. So if you're not matching that, you just vibrationally, scientifically, energetically, you physically can't be here anymore. It's you have to match the vibration of the planet you're on. And if you're not matching that, you just have to go somewhere where it suits you better. It's not a bad thing, but it's like if you are a vibrational match and you stay, it's gonna be beautiful. If you have to leave, it's gonna suit you. That's awesome too, you know?
Exactly. And so I have another question for you. What do you think of when spiritual people say ego death? You have to, come to the ego death.
I don't I understand what they mean, but I also don't fully at the same time because it's like, what is the ego? I took psychology, so this is like, what is the ego? Is it like our persona, our personality, kind of? You don't like kind of soul aspects, possibly. I feel like go into the ego in a sense. Um, that's a huge question that no one really knows the answer to. It's fully what gives you your traits and personality. Like when I think of the ego, I think of also kind of like impulses and acting out of emotions and stuff like that. It's like you don't need to have an ego death. You need to reevaluate how you use your ego. Like an ego isn't a bad thing. You're in a human body, therefore you have an ego. You can't have an ego death, in my opinion. I mean, it's like you
Thank you.
just
Thank you.
yeah.
I I had the same download. So, what do you think of that download? So, like you, I was like, "What is ego?" And then the download I got was from my higher self saying that is my inversion. I am the ego is the inversion of the higher self, and also ego for me is like an alarm system. It's like, and I explained that just yesterday to a friend of mine's. Like, imagine you have this big house with all this expensive stuff in it, right? And you want to protect it. So you buy an alarm system. But you need to get to know the alarm system. So out of your experiences before, like let's say, okay, I had these burglaries, a lot of people came, broke into my house, whatever, took everything. So you're gonna set the alarm very high, right?
Mhm.
But when it's set very high, the sensors, then every wind, every like animal passing by would, would make it go off. And that's not the way you want to live, right? Like every 5 seconds, like there's an alarm. So what you do, you bring it little down. But you will never bring it all the way down or turn it off. So why you would have it, right? You need that. So and I also said like the ego is in that moment where you need to save your own life will be that one thing that will trigger you to survive. Without the ego, we wouldn't be so, we wouldn't, sense danger, or we wouldn't see, certain thing coming, or on the street, driving a car. You wouldn't be able to see, what could happen. So you need to drive slow, when it's snowing or when it's raining hard, that's the ego then telling you, hey, slow down, right? Make sure, because it's here for you to survive. What do you think of that?
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Our ego is like what makes us human. I love that like metaphor. That helps everyone understand it more. Love that.
So, is there anything you want to ask me? I mean, just as we
I
here.
mean, how I'm sure everyone else has probably heard, but I haven't watched a ton of your guys' episodes. So how did you get into it? like spirituality. I want to know a little bit about your journey because I think that's interesting, and especially like astral traveling.
Okay, so it's for me, as I said, I've been through some pain, right? I mean, I had a beautiful childhood in Switzerland. My adoptive parents are very loving and caring, and I couldn't have wished for, better parents. That's for sure. But that's this, you know, primal wound. There was this primal wound, the fact that my, biological mother gave me away. That wound was in me, and there's nothing that can take, heal that. You can be as much, you can receive as much love as you want, but there was always this undercurrent feeling I'm not worthy of love. So I ended up really in a very toxic relationship, and I was working in the banking industry. So I was, surrounded by toxic energy, and I just kept going because that's who I am, right? I mean, I wouldn't look once back and say, okay, what did you do then? I reflect, right? I'm not blaming for myself. So, but it took me so long. I had a total breakdown. So I was really, put on medication. I wasn't able to work. I wasn't able to take care of my children anymore. I really pushed it that far because I thought like I just need to keep going. So
Mhm.
that was actually a blessing because once I got out of the mental institution, I knew, okay, I need to leave that partner. It's, he doesn't show me love. He shows me the love he knows, but that's not love, right? Again, it's like the intention behind it, right? So I told myself, okay, do the first step and leave him. But I still
Yeah.
carried on, working in the banking industry because now I was a single mother with two children. So I needed to make sure, and here in Switzerland, sometimes it's hard, that the father is paying. So I just wanted to make sure I'm safe, right? But then I realized, okay, it wasn't just that partner, right? It was the job as well. Because deep within me, I never felt, really a passion. It was more just I was very driven to get
Yeah.
somewhere, right? But there was never ever a passion behind it. And I'm a very creative person. So I do a lot of, um, self-make stuff like or cooking or baking and in creating things, crafting, knitting, crochet, everything. You give it to me, I'll do it, right? And there I am, just having these Excel sheets in front of me and making numbers work. And it's like, okay, I need to get out of that job. And I've actually met a psychic at my job in the bank, and she just said to me, so, oh, you're one of us, you're one of us. And I said, what do you mean? I was like, what the fuck? And she was like, well, we go for lunch and I explain to you. So she's someone similar like you. She's always saw, the crossed over as a child, or she was given visions, certain visions from, people she had to, interact with and tell them about it. It's just like,
Yeah.
so she started to explain me that, part of psychic, the mainstream psychic part, I call
Yeah.
it. It's not real
Yeah,
spiritual,
that's a
right?
very good term because even among like this psychic stuff, it's like we're still kind of outcast because we're into the
Yeah,
aliens and all
right,
that.
right. So she brought me at least to that topic, right? And she bought me a tarot decks, like gave me, right away tarot deck. Everyone I think starts with that one
Mhm.
because it was the first one, right? So but she wouldn't explain it to me. She was like, "Oh, here, just start reading cards." Like, okay. And I thought she's crazy. It's like she's crazy. But after she told me certain things that's going to happen in my life and they really happen, I started like, okay, maybe there is something about it. Then I started to play with the cards. I wasn't like, the booklet didn't make sense to me. These standard card, readings, like, I don't know how you call them, all these, I just like, no, that's not for me. So I was drawn to someone on YouTube who did intuitive reading, like, intuition, and then, just felt the card. I was like, that's
Yeah.
me, right? And I just started playing around for friends. You usually start with friends, and there, and really sometimes I would repeat word by word what that person experienced with someone else. I was
Yeah.
like, or maybe I got here something. And then I got through that, the whole twin flame stuff came into my picture. So I met my twin flame, and I can tell you, I changed my description of what a twin is so many times. I mean, obviously, first it was the mainstream wagon again, like, oh, romantic twin flame, blah blah blah, mission together, and all these, can be, can also be. But at the end of the day, it's about energy. And that's when I started to look really into energy. I was like, I want to know about energy. What does it mean if your soul splits? You carry the same soul essence, but still you experience something different. So I started to look into energy. And obviously that led me to quantum physics. And then quantum physics, took me somewhere else, and really came really full cycle with the ET again, right? It's like there it was, the ET. So I really dug into that. And that's and it's funny, whenever I ask my higher self, I need to know now. I don't do that very often, but I was at a point then was like, what the fuck is the next step? I was really waiting for the next step, right? And that's the night when the Arcturian Council came to see me. And I was
That's awesome.
and that really and that I think after that experience, I knew, I kind of like knew, whatever my intuition tells me,
Yeah.
I need to follow, right? And but I have to say also, um the fact that I am an adopted child was also very crucial to my, awakening. Because at some point I asked myself, okay, when I created a plan for this life, why did I create this scenario? Being born in Asia and then brought into, Switzerland, Europe, but I was always drawn to America. It's like there is a spectrum here. And what is it exactly, the experience I need to have in order to find my passion, right? So I came to the conclusion that the biggest fear is actually passion you go in life. It's your passion and your mission. So
Mm.
I asked myself, okay, what does it tell me now being an adopted child? It's like unconditional love. I never experienced unconditional love as, as the universe, as the source has planned for us. You know, yes, you can say my biological parents gave me away, because they love me. They wanted to have me to have a better, life. But that was a very condition, because they conditioned a better life based on their conditions, and then made this decision. And that for me is not unconditional love, that's very conditional. Then again, my adoptive parents, of course they adopted me because they wanted to love a child, but that there's a lot of conditions around that situation. And so I
Yeah.
came to the conclusion, okay, it must be unconditional love. How can I do that? How what mission could be behind unconditional love? And that took me back again to children, you know and then it came all together. It's like, okay, I need to have this healing center, with also focus on those traffic children. I would
Yeah.
think the current system is not able to heal them. There needs to be a different approach. I mean, what these kids experienced, you can't do that with just, sit down counseling. It's not possible, right? So there needs to be a spiritual healing behind it. And I love animals and nature. So that's how all this, idea about, that farm healing center came about. And I was led to a beautiful soul sister that actually has already that farm in New York, as I told you. And yeah, that's actually in short how my journey was. to hear.
That's amazing. So now I have three questions
Okay.
based off of that. So I guess first, your your biological parents, have you had any like desire to contact them or have you?
Yes, I did. So for a long time, the ego tells me, "Oh, I'm above this. I don't need to know them." Right? It's like, it's like, okay, out of sight, out of mind, right? But I never felt anger towards them. Funny enough, I always felt anger towards myself. So I went back to, South Korea. I went to the orphanage and picked up my papers and started. Actually, I registered with a company, a, ch- a charity, actually, organization that helps you find your biological family, right? So I gave them my papers and everything, and I just said, like, look, if it's meant to be, they find them. If it's not meant to be, then I tried, right? But I didn't make my happiness, dependent on that, outcome. So maybe 5 years in, 6 years in, I go into meditation. And usually I set this intention, but that day I was just like, okay, let's see what's coming up, right? And so I went into meditation, and all of a sudden I get this vision of an Asian man. And, I can be very sarcastic with myself. I make jokes about myself. And so, I don't know, a fucking Chinese man that has the glasses on. Who are you? you know? And then I just heard spirit or his spirit telling me, can you forgive me? And I knew it was my biological father passing on.
Yeah.
And I know from the orphanage that he was very, abusive. I was when I in the beginning in Switzerland, I would be very, very scared of the dark. And when my adoptive father would enter the room in the night, I would start screaming and go into a corner, right? And I found out that it was very abusive, and I don't know what the abuse was, and I don't need to know what it was, right? I just knew it was abusive. So there I am in this meditation, and I hear this voice, can you forgive me? And all I could say, of course. What else?
Mm.
It was not your fault, right? And then again, I know we agreed to this experience, and it just takes away pain if you can look at it that way.
Yeah.
And my biological mother, that happened like 2 years after that. I had a meditation, and then she appeared as well, and she just smiled and said nothing. And I just, telepathically, obviously, um I just told her, look, I would never feel any ill feelings towards her. I know how hard, being a mother myself, how hard must it be to give away your child? This is a
Yeah.
lot more traumatizing, I believe, than what I've been through being a mother, honestly. Yeah. So, yeah, I haven't seen them, but their spirits came to me, their souls came to me, and I'm at totally peace.
Wow. Like I've never heard anything like that, but then again, I don't think I've ever asked anyone who's into spirituality if they've, contacted their biological parents. You haven't physically had a phone call, but you've had a connection
Yeah.
in a different way. Wow.
Yeah.
So how old were you when you were adopted?
4 years old. So there was a lot,
Okay.
there was a lot of, avoiding, and then just locking, experiences away. You as a,
Yeah.
psychology, it just, for protection. Again, that was the ego trying to protect me. And as I said, I don't want to know even how far the abuse went. And I don't think I need to know because it's not part of me anymore, right? I really healed it in a sense of I can tell that I healed that abuse because I never abused my kids. I never
Mhm.
had this impulse. Even if they drove me crazy, I could never hit them. I could never, make them, I don't know, lock them up in a room or in a cellar or something. So I knew I healed that wound. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So another question I have is about your twin flame. Like what is your current relationship with them? Like what yeah.
So basically, we had a very close relationship, but not as romantic partners, but as really close friends, for about 2 years. And I mean, the healing I've done with him in my life, or the healing he was able to do with me in his life, was tremendous. And I've made a huge spiritual, step towards my mission as well. So I'm totally thankful for it. But I also realized that he does not need to be part of my path now anymore, because initially we met to actually kick off the Kundalini. So that's the way I see it. That when we meet our twin, let's say, some say they meet when they're young, very young, right? But those I've experienced meet them later in life. It's really about to start the Kundalini rising. And obviously I realized that there was a lot of masculine energy I need to heal within myself, and he had a lot of feminine energy to heal within himself. And at the point where I thought our experience ended, he had a big issue with it. He couldn't kind of believe. And I told him, look, you don't need me in your life to feel special. You don't need someone to look up to. And if you cannot let go of these traits or of this behavioral pattern, I need to pull myself out of your life, because
Yeah.
I never think that you should put someone on a pedestal. Respecting and loving someone is not someone that is above you. We're all equal, right? And so I decided to, um, you know, not having in my life anymore. And I'm at total peace as well, again, with this. And I think that's my Aquarian in me, is when I've made up my mind, it's because I'm at peace with something. Otherwise, I keep going, right? But when I reach the point I feel peace, that's it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I love your answer there. I'm like, where is this gonna go? Twin flame story. I love it. You don't need to stay with someone because you think they're your twin flame. It's like, you know, don't put them on a pedestal. I love that.
So how do you see twin flames?
Oof. So I don't
Have you met you?
know.
I would guess you met yours, right?
I don't know. Like I believe that we can have like I believe that our energy can be somewhere else right now because I believe in like having parallel lives and whatnot. And I have had experiences where I've seen myself as this like Antarian being connected to the star Antares in the Andromeda galaxy currently, like right now too, that I go to when I'm asleep and stuff. And so I understand that we can have other lives this life. And then I'm like, okay, so it's possible that a part of our soul can be in another body, even on Earth right now. And I'm like, that sounds rare, but like it can be possible. And like for someone to be a romantic interest, like, okay, that could be possible. So I see how it's possible. And I mean, maybe I have met a twin flame, but I just currently I don't like to use that term just because, especially with younger people, it's like really bad. It's, because the person, like, I've met a lot of close soul family. So, and I don't even want to say a lot, but like, I've met like a handful of people that I've had past lives with. And then some of them I'm like super close with. Like I know I've had past experiences with my parents and my brother, and that's why, I chose them as family this life. And like I'm sure you've had past experiences with like probably your biological parents and then your adoptive parents too, because like the fact that you can rationalize that you agree to that, I'm like, there's probably so many connections there. But it's like everyone, their whole situation, it's so common to incarnate with people that we've known before. But then also I've met mainly a couple of friends and some ex-boyfriends who I'm like, wow, this is like not just like a few lives. This is like a real, like we've always kind of usually incarnate with each other, and it's more often than not that we are kind of in the same like star system at the same time. I've had a couple of those people. Some are just friends, but there's one in particular that I always think of when I hear people thinking of twin flame. Um, but also, this is someone who I feel like a lot of spiritual people, they when they have romantic relationships with people, usually those people are so drawn to them, and it's like spiritual people are always the ex that got away for people.
Yeah.
Like that's something I've always see is like we're all the ex that got away, the one that got away, the girl or the guy or whoever that like they couldn't fully experience that relationship with. And I don't want to hype myself up, but like because I'm sure we're all that person, but I'm that person for a lot of people. And there's a couple guys, like I said, I'm friends with a lot of my ex-boyfriends because it's like I can't fully, there's some that I don't talk to because it's like it's better that we just don't talk. But the ones that like we had a really deep connection with, I am still in contact with occasionally, and some it's on more of a regular basis. And one in particular I'm thinking of is like probably my best friend. Like I don't have many friends. I'm sure they have other like close friends, but we talk a lot now. We had a romantic relationship when I was 16, when I was really going through that major like ET awakening. That's when I met them, and we just immediately had a super deep connection. And it like we were in a relationship, boyfriend, girlfriend, for like probably not even a month. And like there was drama that happened because we were in the same friend group. And so we broke up, and then we would always like kind of hang out again, and then we would see each other and it was okay. But then he ended up dating someone else, and then this girl was like, we're twin flames. And I'm like, oh, it's like, so now it's like I don't like using the twin flame label. It's like I know we're close soul family, and even that girl too, we're close soul family actually. But it's like I don't really want to pinpoint someone as a twin flame because now I'm like, I don't know if we're the same soul or if it's just like we're so close. It's hard for me to tell. So I'm like, if I'm on the border, then I'm just not going to say that they're a twin flame, especially if there's other people claiming that they're a twin flame.
Right.
It's like too messy for me. Like we've had
Exactly.
past connections, and that's good enough. That's all I need to know. We don't need to focus on the label. Like,
Yes, again,
oh,
again, right? It's the labeling stuff I don't like, and I really pulled away from that label twin flame. I have to say, but I do recognize being go being through that phase of believing all that label and what it takes, brings with it, did help my awakening for sure, and the growth. So I totally, can accept that. But as you, I don't like labels, and I think the twin flame label is right now again for me a mainstream money making, idea, and an
yeah.
excuse for many people to stay in a toxic relationship, because
Mhm.
I believe if there is such a thing as your twin flame, they would never want to hurt you. They would trigger you for sure, but there
Yeah.
wouldn't be toxicity,
Hmm.
right? So
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah.
Yeah.
But I always say, we are so, different. Everyone is so different from each other, and we need these different kind of experiences. And I respect that. I totally respect that. And I tell people, if you want to believe in that twin flame thing, and if that helps you, then good for you, right? But don't hold on to it, and be aware of when it doesn't, help you anymore. Be aware of when the moment comes where it actually makes your life miserable, because then you should know it's not the right thing.
Mhm. Yeah. The only other I wanted to ask you more about the community, and I don't know if you want to get into this now or not, but and I know it's like in the works, so I don't know how much you want to talk about it, but I'm interested to hear whatever you have to say about this community in the works. I'd love to hear about it.
The center, you mean?
Yeah, the center, yeah,
So my vision, if I was given that vision, is this what, maybe 3 years ago, just I think just before COVID started, right? So was it the first year COVID? I don't know. The time's so screwed up right now. I'll totally get lost in it. Anyway, a couple of years back, I was given this vision of big land. So I get a lot of visions. So really pictures. So I saw this big land, and I saw animals, lots of animals, and I saw children running around. I just heard, just heard like, trafficking, need healing, need new families, because for most of them you won't find it their original families anymore. And there again came, it's like, okay, that's my experience. I've been adopted. That is really going totally in line with finding new families for these children. And that was the first vision I was given. Then the second vision I saw was really America. It's been always America, and that's so funny. And apparently there is a group of Arcturian living underneath the surface in California.
yeah, yeah.
How does that resonate with you?
Um, I've astrally, I've only had really two major astral experiences, and one was when I met um this child who I believe has some of my energetics. So you could call him my hybrid son. When I met him, I had this astral experience like right after I graduated high school and quit my job that I was working at Sky Zone. I was like totally stress free for a little bit. And one morning I somehow like astral traveled. I saw the earth and I kind of felt like a hoverboard and I was going around the earth, and then I kind of shifted and I got to go into I got to see like all the other climates like Antarctica, and I saw, like Africa, and I went through all these different temperatures and terrains, and I thought that was so cool. And then I was like, can I go in? So I did, and I went in the water, in the ocean, down into the crust, and then I could see that, like, oh, I could go into like this lava magma stuff, or I can keep going down because there's like a cave or something. So I went into this huge cavern and I was like, oh my gosh. And then there was this child who looked like he was like green, he looked part reptilian, but I knew he was my son. And then immediately I started thinking about boy drama, school gossip. And then I was like, hang on, wait right there. I was like, I need to calm down, because like all these emotions just randomly came up, even though I was like so excited. I was like, this is my hybrid son. And I was like, all these human thoughts. So I was like, okay, let's go around Earth again. And I did it quicker this time. And I went back down into the water, into the crust. He was right there. I was like, okay, I'm ready now. Like, what do you do all day? And I just like was like, that was the first thing I asked, was just like, what do you do all day? Like, what? Like, that's what I wanted to know. So he told me a bit about that. And he's like, we got our cave here, and this is how we live, where we live. I learned these things. My dad is with me and he's raising me, and we have this community and there's lots of them. And he just told me a little bit about it, and after a few minutes I was like, okay, for some reason I felt like I wasn't my higher self was obviously in control of this, but it felt like I wasn't even controlling my emotions like I normally do. And I was happy with how the experience played out, but I can't rationalize like why I would like be like, okay, I gotta go. But for some reason, I was like, okay, I gotta go see your siblings now who are like not in inner earth and they're in outer space. I gotta go see them. And then was like, I like fell asleep after that. I was like, okay, I gotta go. And then I just kind of like let that marinate and then I fell asleep. So that was my one experience. And then the other experience, there was a few other of like meeting. I wouldn't call that astral traveling though. That experience meeting my son, I feel like that was kind of astral traveling. But the other experiences I've had with like the hybrid kids and stuff wasn't really astral traveling. The other one was during this meditative experience. I was in like I guess 5D for like multiple hours, which I've never done before. Like I've gotten glimpses before of just like 5D for a second when I have these thoughts of unconditional love. But this one day it was like multiple hours of 5D, and that's when I discovered that I have this parallel life as an Antarian being. I didn't know the name Antarian at the time, but now that I do, I know that that's what it was. And I saw like some scenes from my past lives and stuff, and got to connect with certain beings. But at one point that day, I knew that I was under Mount Shasta, and I didn't say I was in. I said I was like under for some reason, and I had no clue where Mount Shasta was at the time. Like I had heard the name Mount Shasta before, but I didn't know where on earth it was, and I had no clue of its spiritual significance. But it's like some people say it's like the crown chakra of the earth, some people say it's like the root or something. Whatever it is, it's a huge energy vortex.
It is,
And
yeah.
I had no clue that other people had experiences with this, but I knew that there were hybrid children there. There were these blue light beings there. There were Arcturians there, and it was just so wild. There was beds made out of crystals there, where like these unconscious humans, especially young human girls, I found, but humans of all types, were like unconscious, and they were like carried and kind of levitated to these beds, and some were like walking in a daze. It was interesting, like the different levels of awareness people had there. But I was by far the most aware human, and I was still kind of out of it because it was too high vibrational for me. So it in when this happened, it kind of felt like I was like drugged up or something, just like half asleep or something. I was just like out of it. And all the beings there, not the humans who are unconscious, but all of the light beings and Pleiadians and blue light beings and hybrid children and Arcturians that were there were all like, this one's awake. She's out of it, but she's aware. And they were all just kind of thinking good for her, but at the same time they were like acting like I was some drunk person or something there. It was such a weird emotion towards me. They're like, she's a man, but she knows where she is. Like, good for you, little like awake yet out of it human. Like, I guess that wasn't normal for them to have someone like kind of there, and they were just like, okay, yes, you're here. Like, experience it. And that like they were acting like I was drunk or something, like, okay, go home. Like, it was so weird, but I was like, this is so cool. And then eventually I kind of left, and I had other experiences that day, but like I don't remember. I didn't choose to go there. I just kind of knew that my consciousness was there. It wasn't like I saw the earth and got to pick where I went. It was like,
Was your
I'm under
instinct?
Mount Shasta for some
Yeah,
reason.
yeah, yeah. That sometimes happens to me as well when I astral travel. It just happens.
Yeah.
I usually start with meditation, and then all of a sudden I feel that pull out of my. It's really like this energetic body just pulls out from my physical body, and then off I go. And it's really not very often that I have an intention to go, actually. The only time I had really the intention was go underneath the Sphinx. But all other astral travels, they happen once I really reached a certain state during meditation. Yes. So anyway, coming back to the mission was really, I have had this, vision about, having all these different children. And I just saw, uh, the center was like a dome, and it was a lot of glass and a lot of flower, plants and flowers. So I just naturally connected that to a farm, right? It's
Yeah.
like, you got space and stuff. So I was working. So I knew, so okay, that's what I'm gonna do. I work now towards, funding, and so I can buy a farm in America, and so on and so on, right? And as life happens sometimes, um a tower moment hit me again, and I gave money to someone. I actually saved for that mission, and that money wouldn't come back. It's money, but still.
Yeah.
So I had to wait. It's like, okay, now I start again. But then I was connected with that friend in New York. It's like, for me, it's like, how can I do my mission? I need money to buy a farm. I need money to buy a farm, right? It's like, no, you don't manifest that way, city you. You just know it's, whatever you need, it's going to be there.
Yeah.
And yes, so I get this, text from Tracy, who this does this podcast with me. It's like, tell me, it's like, you need to connect to her. You need to connect to her. She's got a farm and she doesn't know what to do with it, but she knows it's part of a mission. Right. So and then we started talking, and she's healing horses right now at this point. But she knows she's got so much it's like 32 acres, I think. She's like, I got so much space, and I know it's more than just healing horses. And then I came up with this concept of healing healing with animals, right? So when you can heal horses, and horses are actually healing spirits for human, right? We can bring that together. And because you have a farm, I wanted children to learn how to, as I said before, grow vegetables. I want them to build stuff. I want them to help us actually build the center, right? Offer, summer camps. I also, we wanted to support, single mothers, um, with, children that are maybe, called with a mental illness, which I don't believe in, but ADS, all these, mm,
Mhm.
letter names, I don't know,
Yeah.
everything out there, right? But for
Yeah.
me, it's basically, these are souls that come in with less filters, and they
Yeah.
are just
So high vibrational.
so high vibrational. That's why they cannot deal with the 3D, reality. And that is why they need a certain setup. People come up, but why would then they need a room like exactly the way it looks all the time if they're so high vibrational? And it's like, imagine they look at their room and see totally different. They see it as an energy, right? And they see it as a concept. It's not linear progression, it is a concept. And the concept they're holding on to, otherwise they are lost, right? And that's why this material stuff needs to be set in a certain way for them to be able to navigate. Well, that's the way I received it as a download. And so yes, so the system currently is not really giving much help apart from putting these children under medication, and just make them comply and just submit to the system again. But we want to offer those children an environment where they can be who they are, right?
Yeah.
There's no pressure from a teacher who says like, okay, you are freaking me out because you don't do what all the other children's do. I cannot deal with you, right? Let's put you on the medication and I'm good, right? And I think a teacher should not look after her own needs when she's a teacher, right?
Right?
For
Yeah.
him, right? They need to look after the needs of the child. So yes, it's growing and growing, but obviously we need to start small and let it grow, organically grow. So we focus first on really healing with horses and having summer camps, or whatever, holiday camps, and for single mothers to be able to bring their children to a place, where they're, in good hands and experience nature and animals. So yes, that's the
I
whole.
love that. I love that. And I feel like there's a lot, I don't even want to say a lot, but there's some people who have like these healing retreat centers where people can go for a short amount of time in like Costa Rica. And there's like some centers in like Sedona where they're trying to start up these communities. And there's so many people who like want these centers and or communities. And it's like, it's just not ready yet. They need funding, they need people, and it's like it's hard to get things going because it's like I want to do similar things and it's like the people can bring the funding. So I'm trying to think. I know the next year or two probably I won't be able to get super into this, but once I am more financially stable, it's like that's what I want because right now I'm in a position where it's like I'm just saving my money now. And eventually, very soon, I'm gonna want to am I going to want to buy a regular house in Michigan? Probably, but I'm also going to want, like, do I want to make this my dream home? Do I want this, like, center? Because I've always wanted something where there's, like, an animal shelter and then a foster home and then, like, a place for everybody, like, a natural healing place rather than, like, a Western medicine hospital. Like, I want this community and I want them in all of these places. And people really just I hope people can take the next step to where even if they have this healing retreat center, if there comes a person who comes to your retreat and they know how to do a certain skill that would be useful to have in a community, it's like think about letting them stay and build the community. It's like everyone needs to just kind
Absolutely.
of participate more. And I'm
Yeah.
so excited for this. And like, I know it's coming soon, but it's like we control when the soon turns into the now.
Yeah.
So I'm looking so forward to your center and I want to visit when I can. I'm hoping that it develops good and that do you have people coming to the center already or is it still in the works?
It's still in the works. So currently, as I'm still stuck in Switzerland, right? She's obviously on the farm, and she just starts talking to people, right? Just raising awareness. But also, what's so beautiful, she works with the horses. She works with the native people. So she's got Indian people, native in American coming in, teaching her how to speak, how to communicate with horses, as well. The farm is on a Mohawk land, so there's a lot of indigenous energy there. It's very pure, right? And it's beautiful. And she said, like, she's spreading the word. Basically, that's what she does. I am more the one that creating the concepts. How do I want it to look like? When people come, what is the concept of the programs, different programs, right? Is children, then adults, and then maybe sometimes or a lot you need combination of the adult and the child together. But also, as I said, having a camp, summer camp, so single mothers or single parents in general. I don't wouldn't even go just to mothers, right? But single
Yeah.
parents have a good place, which is affordable. Obviously, it's going to be non-profit, and we're soon going to start a GoFundMe for that, because we need funding, as you say. 3D works on money systems, so we will need funding. But so I want them to be able to bring these children to a safe place where they can still, go to work. And you know, I mean, in America, you got such a long summer break, right? It's like it's very hard for a single parent to find a good solution that is affordable, but also is good for the child. Usually you get a cheap solution, but then you don't know what really happens to the child, right, during the day. Gets
Mhm.
junk food and I don't know what. So yes, so that's maybe the start is really with summer camps, and then see how it goes. And beside the summer camps, having those children healing sessions, which are throughout the week, where we can say, like, maybe three times a week, we offer a 2 hour group session, for children, and mothers can, or the parents can join, or they don't have to. But the next, and then the step further down the line, then we'll be really teaching, you know quantum physics, energy, you know all this healing, but plant medicine, I think it's very important that we bring the plant medicine up,
Yeah.
and but teach the children how to deal with it, like marijuana. It's so misused and abused, right? But if you use it in the right way, it is a plant medicine, right? Nature does give us something, because it's meant for something to do to us, right? But we need to be introduced to it, and we need to teach the children so they're not abusing it, right? Or ayahuasca, right? I mean, ayahuasca, so many people go on ayahuasca trips, but they don't really get what it's about. Ayahuasca is a spirit, and the spirit is you need to respect that spirit. It's not just some fun trip you go on, right? It's really, you need to prepare for this. You need to be, purging first. You need to clear all your energy, otherwise you're going to have an ugly experience. And then mainstream comes and says, see, it's a bad drug, right? But no, it's not. It gives you what you need at this point. And if you're not ready to do the work before, then you have a horrible experience for sure, right? But we need to reintroduce the plant medicine, that's for sure.
Definitely. Yeah. Moving away from all the big corporations and all the big mainstream and just finding our own truth and our own healing mechanisms and all that is so, so important. And teaching the kids that. So I love
So yeah, and then obviously you have to come, right?
that.
And I already see, actually, when you said like I come visit, when you ask like, oh, when people come
Yeah,
and heal and have skills, will you ask them to stay, And I just saw you coming, for like, having your special thing, and having a certain time in the year. So our center is going to dedicate a certain time in the year, which is when it's, working for you, to come and have your thing
that would be
promoted there.
so amazing.
So that's
So
what.
amazing. Because, like, when you said, like, you commented on the video and you said you talked about this center in New York, and I'm like, that's the one place in the whole world that, like, I could realistically visit because I
Well,
have
isn't that
family.
crazy? Yeah.
Yeah, because I have family in Rochester, so I'm like, that's like the one area that I really could visit. So that's so
So
divine.
so where's Rochester? So I just know her farm is near Albany, about 30 minutes drive from Albany. So
Yeah, I feel like that's a couple hours away from Rochester, but that's not that far of a drive for me. Like I'm someone who, if it's a couple hours, if it's single digit hours, it's really not that far. I mean, Rochester, I live in between Detroit and Flint and Ann Arbor, right in the smack dab middle of all three of them. So Rochester, New York is about like now that I don't go through Canada, it's about like a 7 hour drive. Um, so I don't mind driving a couple hours out of there because I go to like Skinny Atlas, which is like 2 hours away from Rochester when I go there because I have family there. I think where the center is probably the other way, or maybe that's the same way. I'm not too familiar with New York geography quite yet, but yeah, it can't be that far.
yeah, so it would really, you will be invited, that's for sure, right? And I keep you posted about it.
Yeah.
But Sid, I thank you so much. I mean, I was really. Did you know it's over 2 hours? We've been on
Yeah,
over 2 hours. I could speak to you for hours,
I
and
know.
and I would love to, for you to come back on. We always say to other people, all the other ones as well. It's like, we would like you to come on again, and tell us about your progress, and tell us about, you know new experiences, right? New epiphanies. And we really
Yeah.
want to build this community where we connect all these light workers, right? All over the world, right? So, and obviously, it's I call it, we built a new, light grid, you know and
Mhm.
so we need to,
That's what it is.
right.
Yeah.
And so, but obviously we need to have you all back on, and report on how it's going. But also, we would like to support you, in whatever you need in going forward, and following your mission. So would you send me all your details, contact details, all your services you offer right now, right? So we're going to put everything in the description box. And yes, is there something final you would like to share with the group here, with our little group, hopefully growing?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously so much more we could talk about, but I guess this is a good place to wrap it up. So I have a YouTube channel called Sid Alexandria, and I post a video every week. And if sometimes I'm a bit behind on videos, and that's when I'll post a few in one day or in one week. But yeah, I've been doing YouTube for 4 years. I hope to offer courses, like we kind of mentioned, in the coming year in 2024. I want to start doing like online classes. But yeah, I offer readings, intuitive readings, usually about other star systems that people are connected to in past lives. And I like to answer questions. So if you are interested in being on my wait list, because now I have a wait list, which is
That's
so weird.
great. That's
Um,
so great.
yeah, but email is the best way to get to me, and my email is sydalexandriaegypt@gmail.com, but I'm sure you'll put that in the description. That's all I really want to say. Thank you so much for having me. I love talking to you. Like I said, we could talk for so many more
But
hours.
right, no, we're definitely gonna catch up, right? And
Hmm.
yes, thanks for coming on. I know you're so busy, and being, mother, and your job and everything. I mean, taking out this time for us. This is so beautiful.
First,
Thank you
of
so
course.
much. All the
Thank you.
best.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.